Hi, everybody. We're just getting this queued up. We can give everybody about 30 more seconds to join, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started now. So we've got tapped out on our participants for the time being. So welcome to Finding the Beauty, Retail Planning with Ulta Beauty and Sunday Riley. My name is James Snyder. I am the practice lead for supply chain and retail analytics. And with me today, and I'll let them introduce themselves as well, is Rola Lasco, Heather Lane, and Brian Barch. And Rola, if you could introduce yourself, and then we'll move on to Heather and then Brian.
Sure. Hi, Rola Lasco with Analytics. I come from industry, supply chain practice, mainly retail CPG space, led planning organizations, and I'm so excited that we've got some experts in-house to share some learnings with you all. Heather, over to you.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Heather Lane. I lead the sales and operations planning team here at Ulta Beauty. Been with Ulta about 4 years, and prior to that had a little bit of manufacturing experience. So love working in the retail space. Excited to talk about that today. Brian, over to you.
Awesome. Yeah. So I lead demand and supply planning with Sunday Riley. My whole career really spans the CPG and retail space. I've gotten to work with a lot of software and looking forward to the discussion today.
All right. And just around the horn a bit, James Snyder, as I mentioned earlier, practice lead for analytics for supply chain and retail. I have over 20 years of experience working for a variety of different Fortune 5 and 500 companies in retail planning, finance, operations, primarily in the retail vertical. And so thank you all for coming today.
I'm going to go ahead and kick off our first question, and really we'll start Heather and Brian, if you guys could both provide a quick overview of your business, what you feel comfortable sharing in terms of some of the current challenges and trends you've seen of late.
Sure. I can kick us off. So like I said, I'm Heather Lane. I work for Ulta Beauty. Hopefully most of you have seen an Ulta, been to Ulta, or used Ulta.com. But we are the largest beauty retailer, a premier beauty destination for cosmetics, fragrance, skincare, hair care, and salon services. The company was started in 1990, and we operate over 1,350 doors currently, with that expanding, and we are in all 50 states. So domestic, we haven't expanded internationally, but we are within all 50 states. So gives us a really good opportunity to service our guests in person. And then of course, we have our Ulta.com platform as well. So with that, and with having so many different stores and a large distribution network, we've grown very quickly at Ulta Beauty. And so we are looking for companies like Analytics and software like Anaplan to help us pull mass amounts of data together to solve solutions. And the one in particular that I'll talk about today was our cost to serve tool and some of the pain points that we had within Ulta and how this solution helped us get there. So hopefully that answers your question, Rola. I don't know if you want me to go into more detail now, but happy to talk a little bit more about those pain points and that solution that we came up with.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to dive into those in a little bit. I appreciate the background, and hopefully everyone's familiar with Ulta and their amazing products. Brian, if you could do the same courtesy and tell us a bit about Sunday Riley, some of the challenges.
Yeah, so similar to Heather, right? We've had tremendous growth, and as you know, that's a good problem to have, but growth can be challenging to manage and rein in and make sure that your processes grow at the same rate as your sales. And then I think secondly, we have a large geographic footprint, not only in the United States, but also internationally. And so with that comes complexities and challenges, selling in different geographies, moving product in different geographies, all while I think everyone's aware that there's been just general macro supply chain challenges over the last few years. So navigating that with an international business and high growth I think it have been some of the key challenges that we've been working to rein in.
Excellent. We've got a common thread here as we think about managing growth and productivity, which is one of the major balances we have within our world of supply chain. Talking through a little bit when we started the projects, what were some of the objectives that you had planned for and that you've achieved, and how has it impacted your business as you've gone down this journey?
I can kick us off here. Feel free, Brian. I don't have to go first every time, but
No, ladies first.
So I'll talk a little bit about cost to serve and the solution that we were looking for. But essentially, we have a plethora of data, right? And the first thing we needed to do was to figure out what do we need out of our cost to serve model. We had built quite a few different platforms internally, and to be totally transparent, a lot of them existed within Excel, right? And then from that, you kind of come up with a cost estimate, a solution, and you do the back and forth, the email back and forth, the swinging by the desk, the phone calls. And, to Brian's point, there wasn't that solid process with the growth that we had as a business. So we were looking for that one solution that could pull all of those assumptions together, and so that we could be really agile when making quality and timely decisions. And so that's where the cost to serve model came in. After doing our due diligence internally, it took us probably about 6 to 8 months to really work with our finance partners and to get all of those inputs vetted out. We were then able to do our homework on who would be the best partner to help us build that solution. So that's where we came across Analytics, who introduced us to Anaplan, and helped us build that model. We actually just wrapped up the project a few weeks ago. So we are in that process of change management now, with our internal partners and rolling that out. We know the challenges that come with that, but I think everyone's really excited to have that one-stop shop for cost to serve and to have a single source of truth. So with the change management comes also the excitement of having that model. So we're going through a lot of that right now and training our peers so that they have access to this data at their fingertips and so that they can be as quick as possible to make solutions. I will say something. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, finish up.
I was just going to say something at Ulta that, we really take into account is we always put our guests first. So just because something has a cost associated with most decisions we make do, right? That will be one driving force in the decision that we make, but ultimately we're going to look at that impact to our guest, and how can we make sure that they have the product at the time that they need it. So it's kind of the driving point of a starting conversation of this is what it'll cost us to do it. And then we can figure out from there, loyalty with our guest is most important. Let's make that right decision.
So when you were looking at the cost to serve model, and what were some of the scenarios that you were looking to model out, just to give a sense, a little bit more detail, and maybe some of those metrics as well?
Sure, absolutely. So the one that comes to mind that's probably the most often, I would say, are expedites. So as you can imagine, and we all know this to be true over the past couple of years, product does not always arrive exactly on time. So when product arrives late into our DCs, we then have to obviously quickly adapt and get it to the stores as quickly as we can. If it's an e-com sale, that of course will stay within our DC network, but we do have to push that out to 1,350 doors very quickly usually. So we will expedite at that point. We'll utilize our parcel partners to get that to the stores. And if it's a mascara versus a blow dryer, very different costs, right? And what you're shipping to those stores and what they need. So that's where that cost to serve model is very important, because you have to get down to that SKU level detail and know dimensions. How much of that quantity do I need? What's the cost of that? Is the margin worth it? So that's why we really needed Analytics to help us drive that solution down to the SKU level so that we had all of that data in one place and we could quickly pull a estimate together and say, nope, that's too much, or yes, that's the direction we want to go. We also obviously work with our brands quite often and our vendors, and they'll help to fund some of those costs if something that they shipped late or what have you. So we want to make sure that those cost estimates are as close to the pin as possible. So when the true cost comes in and we actually push the button to make it happen, those numbers align. So that was really important to us to make sure that we had good cost analysis and that trued up pretty closely when we actually went to make that decision.
Excellent. And so basically you get the rate card, you need the flexibility to make adjustments to that rate card, as well as just the process to enforce that it's consistent every time you do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one thing I'd say, James, that was really helpful for us, and we're already seeing the benefits of this, is the seamless communication. So it's very easy to see within Anaplan who that next approval flow is in the process. And before it was truthfully a lot through email. So, you'd kind of have to tap people on the shoulder, like, did you see that email? I sent it your way. We got to get this moving. And now we have a seamless process that goes to the right owners. They check off the box to approve or not approve. And then it goes to that next streamline effect. So for us, that was really important to take away all of that manual work and make it not just seamless, but also historical, right? Hey, you approved this on this date. And so that's, keeping track of some of those decisions that we're making along the way.
Excellent.
Thank you, Heather. Brian, can we expand a little bit on some of the challenges and how you could approach the initial staging of the project?
Yeah, absolutely. So we implemented the demand planning module first with Alytics. And I think a lot of our challenges were just, forecasting is part art, part science, right? And so our company's always been great at the art part of it. We needed a little bit more science into the equation. And so not unlike many companies, right? You resort to spreadsheets, but that can be rife with errors depending on who pulled the data, when they pulled the data. Always knowing if it's correct, if it's refreshed or not. And so we sort of needed a place to house the forecast, to be one source of truth. And I think, like anyone, you want to come to discussions with data, right, to be as objective as you can, because it's one thing if Brian tells sales what the forecast ought to be. It's another thing if a system is objectively saying this is a starting point. And so I think that's what we were missing out on, and one of the things that we craved. I think what really appealed about the approach with Alytics and Anaplan was, we could take a crawl, walk, run approach, just given where we were at in our maturity and how fast we were growing. I think there are some software packages, right, that would just be complete overkill. The timeline to get them in, it would already be irrelevant by the time we got to start using them. So I think that's what really appealed to me, was that we could get up and running quick. I think my own view of Anaplan, having used it prior to coming to Sunday Riley, was that it's something an individual could pick up without much knowledge very quickly, right? It's intuitive to someone. I think you could sit with someone for 20 minutes and walk away already feeling like you've got pretty much the gist of it. So I think that was appealing to us and our challenges. And as I mentioned, I once had a manager say, I still love this line today, and I didn't appreciate it when I first heard it, but a stat forecast is a commodity these days, right? You can do that in Excel. Anyone can do triple exponential smoothing if they want to look it up. So then it comes down to what's flexible, what's easy to get adoption on, right? You start making decisions on those terms. And I think that's really what appealed. I mean, I think total timeline, was maybe 16 weeks for us to get, from getting data in, having initial discussions and scoping, to being up and running and using the tool. So from my viewpoint, that was pretty good. We couldn't really afford to have, an 18-month long project.
Thanks, Brian. I was going to ask you about the timing on that as well. From the point that we met initially in Houston to the team taking it off and actually building it out before you're getting it configured.
Yeah, I mean,
kind of punch up that message of flexibility. I mean, this is a flexible platform. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I almost think about it in terms of like thirds, we sort of took that first third to sort of lay out the groundwork and expectations and maybe our desires and how we wanted things to look. And we kind of spent that middle third gathering the data, developing the hierarchy, filling any holes or gaps, and then taking that last third to sort of prove things out and get people up and running and get adoption with the system. And I think that approach worked really well for us. And we were able to bring in other individuals' viewpoints. And I think that's what I like about the approach. We took a train the trainer approach such that, we've got individuals identified as subject matter experts internally who are taking on the system as their own baby, adopting it, wanting to hone it, and wanting to take it beyond where it first arrives at to say, hey, these are some things we want to learn ourselves and tweak the system. I think that's appealing as well. It's a system where someone who maybe didn't have prior knowledge of the plan could get to a level relatively quickly of even being able to modify the system.
So I also want to ask you, and I'll ask this to Heather as well, as you're looking at the solution, how many people are actively using your solution? And as your business grows, do you see that you need to scale on more people, more individuals, or are you able to basically absorb that scale through the existing process?
Yeah, I think that's great. And we've definitely added people as the business has grown, and Anaplan's gotten a wider reach within our organization as time has gone on. And not to get too far outside of the question, right? But now we're working together on the supply planning module. So even the software is growing in its usefulness in other applications within the organization. But I know I already alluded to it. One of the things I've really enjoyed is I don't have this sort of cringe when we've sort of got to bring someone else into the fold, whether it be our warehouse or a totally different department, and they want to look at data that's in Anaplan. It's not the sense that, well, okay, let me put a training on the calendar. It's kind of like, hey, we can just have a meeting and I can walk you through the numbers real time. And so I think that's been good in terms of getting other people up to speed. The adoption's grown. I think we got our subject matter experts up and running right away. And then from there, we're sort of slowly infiltrating, if I can use that word, other parts of the organization as people get to use the system. And finally, as I mentioned, I know we're getting into supply planning next. So looking forward to that.
I'll have some more questions on you on the supply plan, but I want to say a question to Heather. Is just, as you know, putting in context, we've talked about kind of the process a little bit, but how many people are involved in cost to serve, and how many different individuals are touching the system? You mentioned earlier about sending spreadsheets and emails, and now that that's gone, is the solution that you have today going to serve those individuals? And if you have more volume coming through, is it going to be able to accommodate that as well?
Yeah, I think one thing that the tool has done for us is really made us sit down and do some process flow mapping, right? Of what should this look like in an ideal state, right? We need to have the right approvers, but does it really need to go through these teams, or are they more of a consult on the RACI than they are of a responsible party, right? So before we even kind of presented this to Alytics as this is what we needed, like I said, we had done a lot of our homework to figure out what we need, what's working and what's not. And so we were able to keep it somewhat tight. I'd say we've got about 14 to 15 users within that space, but at least half of those are just approval flow. So that other half are people that are actually in there kind of touching it, using the system itself. But to Brian's point, if we want someone in our DC network, someone in our corporate office to use the information that's there, it's very easy to show that and to share it. But we do have those SMEs that are, in the tool and owning it. And then we have a very clear process flow defined in the cost to serve model so that you know who it's going to next. And so that we can really have those gates, if you will, along the way before those big decisions are being made.
Excellent. So I want to switch gears a little bit. I know this is a little bit of a different journey for both of you, but Heather, can you talk to me about, you were out there shopping around for cost to serve models. How did you get to Anaplan?
Yeah, good question. Because it took some time to find the right partner. I think there were a few things there. Is one, we had a timeline that we wanted to meet. And to make sure that we could get something up and running in time for our holiday season, and that we had that kind of at our fingertips. If there's anything that, COVID has taught us, we want to be as agile and as flexible as possible, and not having, that cost to serve tool doesn't allow you to do that within our company. So that was the first thing we were looking at timeliness. We were also looking for a partner in Alytics that could really help guide us with Anaplan, because we had never used that software before. We had a few people in the company that were familiar, had it at another company, spoke very highly of it. But for Alta, it was new. It was a new software for us to take on. So definitely liked that guidance that Alytics brought, and seeing some examples of things that they had done for previous companies, how that would work. Really high level. Here's some solutions that we're looking at. That was really great to see. Just how you could visualize very upfront how that was going to look. For me, I need that as a leader to be able to kind of see, I know in my head what I want to see, but I've got to be able to kind of see it within the solution itself. And then the last piece was we wanted something that was very easy to use, right? As you're training people across the organization, and there's people much outside of supply chain that use this as well. We want it to be pretty easy, right? And seamless as you're kind of putting in your information, and as you're dropping in data, and as you're trying to come up with that final number, it shouldn't be so complicated. And so that was something that Anaplan gave us that solution, and then very clearly, and visually showed you whether that was worth it or not to kind of move forward with that decision.
Excellent, excellent. So I just want one quick question. I mean, when you're talking, this is a similar question I asked Brian earlier, is around timing. How long did the project take to deliver you a process and a model that now you can, because you were under a short timeline, you wanted to get this up and running before holiday, because that's assuming most of your expedites and
Yes,
come
a lot
together.
of expedites happen this time of year. And outside of just expediting, we also look at reverse logistics and the cost to the product lifecycle management of our product. Every product eventually has a home that it needs to return back to. So that's also what Cost to Serve has done for us, is really give us those options when we're trying to figure out what to do with product, whether it be in our stores or our DCs or both. And how to disposition that product, if you will. So that's another piece of what we were looking at. But end to end, the project collectively, from the time we met with Alytics and really kicked things off with Anaplan till the end, was about 8 to 10 weeks. So it was a very short period of time. And we had, a really good scoping call. We made sure we were all on the same page. Meeting in person and really mapping things out helped a lot for my team, just so we could all get on that same page. And then having the resources internally too was critical, right? We laid expectations early and said, this is the time commitment that this is going to take. This is the time in those weeks. And that held us very accountable. And then I would say also just having, daily scrums, daily check-ins with the team really keeps that project moving. So, I've been on a lot of projects in the past and they usually don't stick to a timeline that tight. So it was nice to be able to deliver to the timeline that we, said we would in the beginning.
It's awesome. I know what was the first project that we've done where we had to run up towards holiday, like, hey, we really need this tool to do this thing. We've got some other clients in the retail space that kind of come across those as well. It's always kind of fun to like, how fast can we deliver this solution? So, thank you for sharing that with me. But Brian, similar question to you is how did you get to Anaplan? I know it was a different journey with Sunday Riley, but you had some needs around demand planning. We had some early conversations, and then I think you joined the company after we initially talked to your leadership.
Yeah, that's right. So, well, I think it helped that I had used Anaplan with Coca-Cola before. And so I personally had familiarity with the system and had a lot of success with the system. I think for us, the appeal, once again, was just the flexibility and ease of use, ability to hit the ground running. And I think maybe the biggest part is the whole, when you think about the whole connected planning, you get into supply planning, you get into financial planning, the ability to sort of spread throughout the entire company to be a system that could both be implemented for a specific purpose and a specific module, but also that doesn't jeopardize your ability to extend that in chunks throughout the organization, maybe when the time is right. So, we haven't done a financial model yet, but maybe that's something we'll look into in the future. We've got that choice, right? That doesn't slow us down from getting demand and supply planning up and running, but we've still got that ability to grow throughout the rest of the organization as we need to. So I think that was something that appealed to us a lot, and the ease of use and the flexibility. I've used some bigger systems that have forecasting as one module, but they're these behemoths that your company then adopts for 10 or 20 years. And, and they become irrelevant, right? And so that's definitely not the way we wanted to go. Certainly a web-based application. I think all of the above appealed to us.
Excellent. So, just kind of, I'll keep on you for a minute there, Brian, but, when you work with your implementation partners, I mean, how did Alytics help kind of navigate kind of the change management? So just want to understand that a little bit, because, again, as you're implementing new systems, new tools, new processes, that can be daunting for a lot of organizations. So I want to understand kind of like, how did that work out and how was that relationship?
Yeah, I think, Alytics helped us take the approach. I don't know. I have 3 kids, right? When I want them to eat their vegetables, I invite them to cook with me. And I think we took that approach a little bit with launching Anaplan, which is, who are the users or people, and get them invested in the system early on. Don't let it be something where it's like, oh, okay, we're rolling this out. Now we want you to suddenly drop what you're doing and take an interest. So I think getting them invested, getting their ideas early on, regardless of level within the organization, right? Everyone's got a new perspective or a different use case for how they're going to use the system. So I think that was one of the ways of helping, is just taking an approach of getting a wide team involved, assigning certain roles so people understood, hey, I'm going to be a subject matter expert, or maybe I'm the key stakeholder in this project. That's my role. Giving a sense of ownership there. And then I think, it was already alluded to, the daily scrum, I think, is really good for just keeping people on pace, you can only get so far off track when you're talking about things daily, right? And I don't think anyone is here to pretend that there's never any hiccups when you're launching new software. There's always going to be hiccups, right? So then the key becomes, are we getting people together, invested often, to talk about those so that the train can't get too far off the tracks?
That's one of the things I do enjoy about like the daily scrum, is there's so much transparency. You're not going away. I mean, you're working on a fast project. You were 18 weeks and Heather was 8 to 10 weeks. You're meeting on a constant basis. You know where you're trending, you know what you're tracking, you're immediately identifying risks and opportunities as you go along and resolving those in real time, as opposed to a gated process that you're like, oh, we're going to find this out at the end. No, there's no surprises here. And that shouldn't be kind of all our projects that are done in Anaplan, is making sure that there's full transparency throughout the whole engagement and identifying, being agile to things that come up. So
With very minimal cost, time cost. So.
yeah. So same question to you, Heather. I mean, as it sounds like you were a lot in a different place from change management.
Yeah.
In terms of how you structured your team, you're ready to go, you're thinking about this, you had some strong men on your business process, but still you need to translate that into technology and make sure that your teams are engaged.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So we had to take a little bit of a different approach, only because of priorities, if you will. So obviously the teams are being stretched really thin this time of year, and we want to be respectful of time and also make sure that we're collaborating at the same time. So that's always hard to do, to figure out, do I overshare, do I undershare, and make sure that you've got kind of everyone bought in. But yeah, that was the first thing we did, was those key players that were going to be in the tool, utilizing the tool, those approval flow, high level. This is what we want to do, and this is what we need. This is how we do it current state. It's really powerful when you show current state versus future, and what benefits they're going to get out of that very quickly. So we were able to get that adoption, I think, upfront really quickly, that yes, we need a solution. Yes, this looks like the right solution for what we need. However, what is the resource and the time that you need from my team, right? That's always kind of that second question.
Absolutely.
So I will say from our team, we led a lot of the upfront work, or we did the work, if you will, internally, and then we kind of feed that through analytics to our Anaplan solution. So that was how we approached it, so that we weren't consuming too much time and resources, but that we were still communicating with our cross-functional partners so that they were along the ride for the journey. And now, as we're going through the change management process, we're right in the middle of that. We're going through training, we're rolling everything out. It's not a surprise to the teams. They're aware of what's coming and why. They're excited to use it. They're already in there using the tool. Of course, there's a few questions here and there, but I wouldn't say, because we started that process up front and introduced it early, it wasn't as painful as it would have been if we just would have built something internally on my team and then tried to share it out. That's usually not successful, as most of us know.
Well, I imagine with both of you too, as you're going through the change management, as you bring more team members on board, as you start using it, there's also questions that arise of like new functionality and things of that nature. Not sure if you're there on your journey, because you're maybe Brian, you are, and Heather, you're probably a little bit further from that. But
Yeah.
How are you guys approaching that as far as, hey, I've got something that, it would be great if the tool did this, and are you guys countering that now? Are you thinking about that? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would say any project you do, there's
Absolutely.
always what I call phases, if you will, right? There's that initial phase of the adoption and the implementation. And then what's worked successfully for us is to give it time and collect feedback. If you kind of just try to go after each piece individually, that can be very painful and that can be very costly and sometimes duplicate work or do rework, if you will. So usually I'll give it a few months for a tool to roll out, and we'll have about every other week just checks with the people that are using the tool. So, what is your feedback? What is working well? What's not? Make sure that that's not just one voice of the customer. It's really that overall solution that we're looking for. And then gather that feedback and then bring that back as, hey, here's our next phase. Here's our enhancements that we need. And understand, is that a quick enhancement or is that, a whole nother project that we need to roll out? And that's where Alytics can come in and really guide us of, yes, this is under, what we've talked through and we can do that enhancement quickly, or no, this is going to take some additional resources and time and we need to scope that. So that's how we're approaching it. And we've done that internally with quite a few projects as well. But you've got to be careful not to kind of jump the gun and say, yep, let's just go ahead and make that change now. It's usually best to give it some time to make sure that that's really the best change that we need to make.
There's a kind of a saying that we throw around, and at least in the organization, is can versus should. So can we do it? Yes. Should we? That becomes a question of like, what's the right thing for the business? I mean, it doesn't, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So I thought I'd share that along with Brian. Now, to your experience too, it's just as you're kind of exiting, you're using the tool and thinking about kind of the, people using it, what kind of feedback that you're getting. How are you guys distilling that and thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've utilized the plan with Alytics to make continual changes. We're committed as an organization just to an iterative approach, just given the speed of our growth. That's definitely the path we need to take. And certainly we don't want to, paralyze ourselves in wanting something perfect so that we never get started. So we've committed to an iterative approach. I think as people have brought up solutions, can the tool do this? Or maybe now that I see this, I'd love it for it to look this way. We sort of just have our own rainy day list, if you will. And we're tackling that with the Alytics team as time allows, right? For us internally, we all have other aspects we're working on. And so some things are really high priority or some things are low priority. And we've taken that approach that over time, things are working great, right? So nothing's stopping us at this point. So everything tends to be a low to medium priority at best, but definitely changing those things as we go. And I think that's been working well for us. We've already made some changes. Just once again, as you see things, you work with things, you go, maybe I actually would like to see it this way. So
talk a little bit about kind of, the existing project. I guess, as you're looking at this investments you made, Brian, and what comes next, how are you guys thinking about extending, expanding an Anaplan? Because we started with demand, both from a sales planning level and a demand planning level for your planners, your sales teams. But I guess what comes next, and maybe talk about your journey and your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So getting back to connected planning, right? We're at a point in our journey right now where we've got systems, they don't necessarily feed real time into each other. And so we end up having to do some of those manual uploads at certain cadences, really as often as we want the data to be refreshed. And so one of the things we aim to tackle is having the data be more real time. So as you think about, something from our ERP system that has real time POs and sales, connecting that in with Anaplan such that first demand planning, and then the demand plan spits right out into a supply plan, explodes bills of material, and then it's all real time. So I think that's definitely where we're looking to go in the future, to make sure that what one system is saying, Anaplan's exactly in tune with the right time. So I think that's what we aim to accomplish in the future. Right now, once again, getting back to the Excel, and probably not unlike a lot of companies, I know Excel gets slammed sometimes, but it ends up being a good interim tool. But as you scale and as you grow as a business, right, you exhaust individuals in their roles because they're constantly updating data themselves. Mm-hmm. You're always wondering if you've got the most recent file of something. And so as we're doing some of those manual, bill of material explosions, you multiply that by X number of items and X number of iterations of those items, and you go, I'll be amazed if we don't make an error, right? Oh. And so Yeah, bound to happen. And so I think we looked at to take some of the manual processes that frankly, software can do better than a human being. Let the software, do what it's intended to do.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think, on the note about like Excel, I think there's some paper that was floating around a while back that says as you have increased the number of cells in your Excel workbook, your chance of an error goes to it's impossible not to have an error.
Sure. Yeah.
So some math guy did or some quant person had done the math on that and said, after about 20,000 cells, you're going to have an error or something
Sure.
ridiculous. So I can't remember what it was, but anyway, yeah.
Heather.
So
Yeah, Heather's a similar question. I mean, in both cases for Brian and you, there was a specific use case to solving a specific problem. But as we look over the fence, what else can you see other applications for the tool in the future?
Yeah, I think where we have a room for expansion with Anaplan is really around scenario planning and contingency planning. From what I've seen from Anaplan, we can get upfront solutions very quickly. And looking forward to having that outside of some of the assumptions, broader assumptions that we have to make today. Obviously, COVID was one big contingency plan for multiple years, right? Where we all had to pull those playbooks out and really figure out how to flex those muscles. So I think that's where we want to go next. Just knowing, with 1,350 stores, a large distribution network, there's a weather event every single day, right? And there's stores closing every single day. And so we have to figure out how to manage that impact to sales, what exactly that looks like for us, how quickly can we reopen stores, what inventory those stores need. And then if a distribution center also has to close, of course, there's a ripple effect there. So I think that's where I see us going next for what we critically need in S&OP and getting outside of so much of that manual manipulation we do today. We have somewhat of a process in place today, definitely, but it could, again, be all stored in that one place, in that single source of truth. That's where I think Anaplan would come up with that solution.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds like, the intent was obviously to have a platform to help solve a specific solution, but the maybe unintended effect was this collaboration and accountability that came with it. And as we think about maybe it's cost to serve, as we think about, is there something in the plan to potentially look at a hindsight for cost to serve and figure out how that could possibly relate to other solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. I think you're spot on. You don't know what you don't know before you use a new software, right? You know enough that it's the right solution for what you need at that time. But once you start diving into that and using that more, that's where the wheels start turning, right? Of, oh, this could be great for X, Y, and Z. So I think that's that next solution for my team that they said, this is what we need, right? This is what we felt over the past few years and are going to continue, frankly, to feel. I mean, we've got just today in Florida, right? A hurricane headed to Florida and impacted a vast majority of our stores. So, we've got to be able to be quick and make those decisions very quickly. And I think Anaplan just being a real-time solution allows you to do that.
All right. So I'm going to turn to some of the questions that have come in. This first one's for Ryan. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the level of detailed inventory supply solution that you're looking for in Anaplan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us, I mentioned it earlier, one of the appeals is sort of the crawl, walk, run approach that we've been able to take. One of the things I've learned in my own career is data is only good if a wide audience can understand it. And so for us, I think it's honestly just, step number one is automating basically the basic tenets of supply planning, right? Your reorder points, your lead times, your variability, where your safety stock should be. And so they may sound simple, right? But once again, when you're executing those and those things are changing in like a post-COVID world, your lead times aren't what you thought your lead times were going to be, for instance. Looking for some automation there. Frankly, I'm a big fan of not letting the numbers get so sophisticated in the detail such that I couldn't go to my leadership and explain those same numbers. And so I think that's been a big appeal that we've been able to maintain with the implementation in Anaplan is, right? It's like the subject matter, this makes sense to the subject matter expert, but this also makes sense to the person in finance who doesn't use the system every day. And we can also take this report out to someone in sales who maybe doesn't use it every day. And so same thing when we get into inventory solutions. I think most of the discussions that we're going to have from the tool are going to be, maybe basic in nature, but far reaching and important in terms of, do we need to increase our safety stock? Is the lead time appropriate here? What level of subcomponents do we want to talk about when we talk about metrics and whatnot? So I think now and even into the future, it's important to our business to keep it simple, but definitely automate the things that aren't being automated right now.
So I think you touched on a really good point is as you start thinking about these things, how am I plugging in? How am I doing this level of detail that as part of my due diligence around inventory? And then how am I serving the other cross-functional partners and either within supply chain, finance, operations, to then say, hey, here's the level of information that that you need in order to kick off whatever process you need. May or may not be an Anaplan, but at least it's a point for you to get a qualified, aligned view of what the inputs are into that process. So I think that's a kind of a key thing. Whereas before it was in Excel, you got your versioning issues, you got everything else that's going on over here. It becomes a little bit more difficult. Just a quick question for Heather though. Also from the panel, cost of service become a kind of hot topic of discussion in my company. How do you advise organizations to start thinking about it and approaching it to focus on cost to serve and contribution profit?
Yeah, good question. I would say the first thing you need to do is determine who your partners are as there's a lot of homework that needs to be done upfront with cost to serve well before you get to that Analytics or Anaplan partner. And again, that's a lot of what Brian has talked about is we almost have too much data, right? And we have to sift through that data and we have to be able to absorb and understand it. So coming up with those assumptions and also taking partners with transportation, right? They're the experts in transportation, figure out exactly what it costs to bring product in and what it costs to flow it back out. We took partners with our DC operations team as they do labor studies for, put away, pick, pack, ship. What does that really cost end to end? And then, of course, vetting all that out with our finance team. So being able to say, this is the assumptions we have based on the homework we've done. Is this the right avenue to take? And then from there, you can start building the tool essentially and figuring out what are the most pain points in my company? What do we do the most often? And as I brought up earlier today, expediting is something we do almost daily here at Alta, right? Especially during COVID when, product was coming in and had to go right back out. So we had to get really good at that. And also reverse logistics for any company is, something that's costly and you have to keep top of mind. So for us, it was very clear where you could see those pain points, if you will, but really honing in on what's going to give us my biggest bang for the buck, especially in the beginning. You're not going to be able to boil the ocean all at once. So you want to kind of break it down into chunks and figure out where you want to start based on what you do most often or what's driving the most cost in your company. And it will quickly become evident and eye-opening of the costs that something you've just always done is maybe costing your company. So, it's a really good opportunity to become more cost conscious and also bring to light, where there's opportunity and process improvement within the company as well.
So when you were assembling this solution, I would assume you got costs from different entities, different systems, and there was really no one system of record for potentially this rate card on cost of service. Is that kind of a
correct? Yes, absolutely. And there's really no history or trend analysis, right? It's like, we do this every day and we're just churning, right? You're that duck in the water, just keep going constantly. But to go back and say, what are we really spending and what is this costing us or our brands? That took some digging and time and, one person trying to pull all these different sheets together, and Anaplan will save that solution for us. Something else that has been really helpful for us is S&OP was always kind of that gatekeeper, and we would do the cost estimates in the past, and then we would go through the approval flow. But Anaplan's allowed anyone that's requesting a cost to serve estimate, if you will, to do their own estimate and quickly see I don't want to go down that route, right? Because sometimes you put in the numbers and the numbers are a little bit shocking. Because frankly, an inventory analyst might not know what it truly costs to flow product into a building and back out in 2 days, right? So it can be a bit eye-opening. And what happens there is it takes away that aspect of my team having to do the back and forth of, no, this is what the cost estimate came up with. They can see that in real time and make that quick decision, like not going to send forward for approval, right? So that's been really helpful to just take my team out of that upfront solution and allow the inventory team to be a little bit more agile on their own.
Is it driven some more financial accountability within your organization as well by kind of like opening that up to a broader view of like, hey, this is how much these things cost. It's all in one place. I can look at it and see it here. That's a good idea, bad idea.
Absolutely. Not just that, I think there's been multiple, honestly, other projects that have come out of it. A good example of that is a big chunk of our inventory is able to ride our conveyors in our DCs because we have mostly smaller product. However, if we have a non-conveyable product, as we'll call it, that's just more costly to move in a DC network. And so just being able to hone in on what does it cost for a conveyable versus a non-conveyable item has driven a lot of projects and conversation outside of that to try to minimize the non-con as much as possible in our network. So it's just really eye-opening when you start putting those numbers on paper and you figure out where you're spending money that could otherwise be a pretty big cost saving.
Excellent.
It sounds like that direct access to information cross-functionally has led to transformative change behavior in terms of how people are addressing their day-to-day tasks.
Yeah, I would say so. I think that the homework we've done and that this tool we've built has been very, very eye-opening for us. It costs, right? Labor's not free. We know transportation's not free, but really seeing that number in front of you and understanding how much sales you have to get to make up for that cost really kind of puts it into perspective.
Excellent. Just one question on the cost to serve. Just to dive in a little bit further. Because you're doing all of this work in Excel, I mean, it just seems, or previously rather,
Yes.
it seems it was difficult to do any kind of analysis after the fact. Are you thinking about, or are you going to be doing any hindsighting to say, was this a good decision? Was this a bad decision? And how are you going to evolve your model over time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think before there was maybe some assumptions made of that's going to cost too much. I'm not even going to send it through. I'm not even going to ask for approval. And now you can quickly run a 30-second analysis and really understand what that will cost. So I think it's allowed us to make decisions more quickly in that way because more than just my team has access to a cost estimate tool that will help drive some of those decisions. So yeah, I definitely think that that's been really beneficial across our company, specifically with our product lifecycle management team, our inventory analyst, and then of course on the supply chain team as well.
Excellent. Quick question for Brian that came up. Looking at Anaplan, what it's been able to deliver, how is that compared in level of effort from like a similar process that you would have to do in Excel? I mean, what is that time savings that you're seeing for your team?
Yeah, certainly. It's been immense in just some of the basic discussions. You're going to meet with someone like a sales vice president and you want to come with numbers in terms of trends, in terms of prior years. I think one of the things Anaplan's done for us is just put everything in one place, right? So yes, we had, 2020 sales and 2021 sales in different places, but anytime you needed to recall that stuff as a baseline, you go through some of the same exercises. And so for us, Anaplan's been great at the data is always there, right? It's getting updated, but the baseline that you're comparing against. So I think once you realize and you come to a meeting with a view, or you're running an S&OP meeting with a certain template that you can pull out of Anaplan, then it's repeatable. And so for someone like me who's putting together some of those presentations, it's nice that you're saying, I don't have to build this chart again, right? That the chart exists. I've proven out that people find value in the chart. That's what I'm going to take to the meeting with me. And so I think for me, it's good. And getting back to the versioning, it's repeatable, right? I don't ever want to build a presentation that someone's going to say, hey, I loved it so much, I want you to do it again. And then I'm going to cringe and go, oh my goodness, right? So you're thinking in the mind of, how can I utilize some of the tools within Anaplan to tell my story such that if people like it and adopt it, it's simple for me. And that's definitely what we've done And, sometimes, like I said, it's the big orchestrated S&OP discussion, but more often than not, it's the one-off meeting with sales or with finance to have a quick discussion. And hey, we just need year over year and maybe what the future 5 months of demand looks like in order to make a quick decision on something. And so for us, it's both the repeatability and the confidence that you're all pulling the number from the same place has been really valuable. And just some of the visuals, right? I mean, certainly I think someone could spend hours creating something similar in Excel, but it's already right there and you can just grab it. You can take a screenshot, you can export it, and it's just done.
Awesome. Just another question, just as you kind of come through and implemented Anaplan, how has that changed kind of the pace of the meeting? Are you using Anaplan within the meetings as part of your discussion to look at the numbers there, to do kind of make it more of a working meeting?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, truth be told, I have Anaplan up permanently. It never goes away. It never gets closed. I've got to log in again, of course, but and that speaks to, there are times where we've led meetings with Anaplan, but there are also times where I use it to quickly recall. And something that I think it hasn't come up in the questions yet that's been immensely valuable is just the flexible hierarchy that we were able to build within our products, right? So many companies are going to have, a product family, a brand family, an item, maybe a customer in a warehouse. You get as granular as you want. And for us, I think it's been really nice to be able to, hey, I want to click in at the product family level. That's relevant at first, but then almost immediately after, I need to go to a size within that product family. And Anaplan's great at doing that. So you get the high level context to make a quick decision. And then you can drill down and say, this is how a different geographical version is doing versus this one. And having that hierarchy, I'm constantly using it throughout the week, just pulling it up ad hoc in a meeting to say, here's where the future is going to go. And frankly, with our growth trajectory, I think in more stable, mature businesses, sometimes you can say, I'll just pull, we sell 10,000 a week. That's what we've always done. That's relevant for us. Sometimes even just looking 3 months into the past isn't relevant for what the forecast is projected to do in the future. And so oftentimes I think where people used to talk about, this is our run rate, you almost have it memorized on some items. It's like, no, let's actually pull in the actual forecast we have going forward. That's inclusive of promotions. It's inclusive of the 50% growth we're seeing on this item. And I think that's just made more fruitful conversations and certainly more forward looking.
You talked a little bit about, that's great, Brian. Thank you. That the ability to drill down, tops down, aggregate, disaggregate the data and be able to work at multiple levels. That's certainly a differentiation as we think about the marketplace, but specifically in terms of how it changed again within your organization. It sounds like there was a conversation or maybe a lack of ownership that you were able to bridge between the sales organization and the planning organization to really get bought into the numbers. How did this potentially change the consensus review or the process you mentioned around S&OP?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when you can come with consistent data, it takes some of the emotion out of it, right? And each department always comes with their own bias, right? I mean, and bless them for it. They absolutely should, but right? Sales wants to sell product. In supply chain, sometimes, right, we're more conscious of not being over inventoried on an item, or if we say we're going to sell it, then we ought to sell it. And so, constantly bridging those gaps, I think it's always helpful. One of the things we're able to do is if we're apart in our numbers, it's saying we built a metric with the analytics team called trend risk that says, hey, if we've been down 10%, and let's say the sales number says we're going to be up 20% in the future, there's a gap there, right? Maybe there's a reason, maybe there's a promotion, maybe there's newness, maybe there's new distribution, but at least we're using the tool to say, hey, on this particular item or customer, we're saying the future is going to look different than the recent past. What gives? Let's now drill down into those. And I think that's added some accountability to say, we've got quick numbers we can pull to sort of justify if these numbers are real or not.
Awesome. Hey, we're just about at time. I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to kind of like share kind of like other thoughts you may have for people that are considering Anaplan as a solution. What kind of advice that you could give to individuals that are on this journey for whatever use case they're looking for in CPG and retail.
Sure, I can start. I think Brian's really done a nice job touching upon it, but if you're in that situation, and I don't know what company isn't, where you have a lot of data and you don't necessarily have a single source of truth, I think Anaplan can be a really good solution for that. It's, you know, in S&OP, something we're always striving to have is where does that one place I go where I can get the data, it's accurate, it's updated in real time, and it's what I need. And that sounds easy. It sounds like we should all have that at our fingertips, but most of us don't. So Anaplan can help with that solution, whether it be cost to serve, demand planning, supply planning, capacity planning, whatever it is. I think we're all in that boat at times. And so when I first came to Alta, I think I was a little bit overwhelmed by the amount of data there was, and honestly, the places that it lived and how, you know, all the different places where I could pull data and how it would conflict. So we've really been on a journey to have that single source of truth for our different processes. And Anaplan has been the right solution for us when it came to cost to serve. And now looking at future potential of expanding further, we're excited for where that can take us.
Yeah, and I think similarly for me, I've alluded to it, right? And I certainly won't name names, but you know, having used a lot of software packages, right? Some of them try to do everything such that they don't do anything well. And I think that's a challenge. And when I think about software, I almost think of a rigidity spectrum. And it's like, you know, things move so fast nowadays, especially within a growth company, that the rigidity can prevent you from pivoting, and then you overinvest in that rigid tool. So you've got to keep investing in it. And I've seen companies fail at that over and over. I think the appeal to Anaplan is it's nimble, it's quick, it's easy to use. While yes, it can be configured to have the capability, it can also be used, going back to that crawl, walk, run, right? It can be used for a client, I think, that's running, but simultaneously it can be used for someone that just needs to crawl. And I think you also can get from crawling, if that's what you've invested in, to running with the same tool with minimal additional effort.
That's I've seen that firsthand with a lot of our clients of how do I, and I look at it as a change management. How do I grow my organization? Because change takes time, and we've had different organizations that want to bite off a lot. And, you know, by X date, we want to have an entire system replaced, and it's not feasible. But if you can think about it in bite-sized chunks, you can move to that in a pragmatic fashion. That's kind of how I approach a lot of my engagements with how both Roland and I approach our engagements, is saying like, what's the work, what's going to deliver the value, what's the smart move here, how do I move through this in a pragmatic way that is going to deliver value, you know, not, you know, tie up my key resources and really kind of move to that end state goal, whether it be you know, a very automated planning solution or supply solution or a cost to serve, financial cost to serve solution. So right on target there, Brian, with what we've seen just with all of our clients and what we've seen in this platform. I did want to thank you all. We're at time now. I wanted to thank, you know, Heather and Brian for participating as panelists, and I was hoping that the participants of the call really got a sense of, you know, this is a flexible platform. You can do a lot of different things with this. You can solve financial issues, some process issues with respect to things such as cost to serve. You can build out demand plans. You can use this cross-functionally, bring other people into the fold, really grow this platform to deliver value across your enterprise. So I wanted to thank everybody who joined this call. And you know, if you have any other questions about Anaplan, please reach out to us, and we're happy to engage you on talking about your organization and learning about some of your challenges. Thank you guys all very much. Bye now.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.